Yesterday, I spoke about the many missteps that Conservative Inc. and MAGA have been taking recently, and asked, I think, the very pertinent question of who MAGA is for, who they are working on behalf of, what all of their goals are aimed towards, what they're working towards. Sadly, I missed this amazing clip yesterday that came out about 5 minutes before the podcast started, because obviously there were the problems with Trump's statements on H-1B visas. There were Trump's problems with his statements on Chinese students. There were Trump's problems with announcing that he might be doing 50-year mortgages, which is definitely just to help you, dear citizen, onto the jobs ladder and not make the banks even more money off of exorbitant interest payments over the course of the extra 20 years that you'll be paying on top of the 30-year mortgage that's already available.
It's basically to expand the franchise of moneylenders, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all it is. That's not in the public's interest.
Pretty much. But there's a lot of other problems going on in the country right now outside of what Trump has been saying. And one of the problems has been that his biggest cheerleaders are becoming more and more desperate when they're trying to excuse and explain away the things that he said. Yesterday, I saw a lot of people pointing to the old cases of the good Tsar, bad boyar excuses that were used in Tsarist Russia. If the Tsar ever made a problem, if he ever made a mistake, well, it wasn't his fault, he's got our best interests in mind. It's his bad advisors. They're the ones that we should be blaming. If only we can get the good advisors on his side, then our country will be great and prosperous again. I've seen that deployed a lot, because every single time he says something wrong, everybody goes, who's Trump getting his information from? Who's he listening to this week? I can't believe he's making all these mistakes. If only he would listen to Stephen Miller. If only Stephen Miller were in charge of all of Trump's decision-making, then America would truly be great again. But perhaps it's just that Trump has bad judgment for advisors.
Well, being a good leader also means knowing who to listen to, doesn't it? And who has the best advice.
The most important attribute.
I would agree.
Or perhaps this is just Trump's genuine vision of America and what America should be like when he's running it. And then this clip comes out, and I've not really seen anybody try to defend this because, frankly, you can't.
What is the administration's position on these visas?
Now, we're going to keep using our visa programs. We're just going to make sure that they have integrity, that we're actually doing the vetting of the individuals who come.
Oh.
Is the internet working? The internet's not gone down again, has it, Harry? Please, I'm going to reload this page. I'm going to reload this page and hope. Okay.
White House is shutting it down.
All right, yeah. We're getting digital strikes from Tel Aviv. No, that's a joke. It's from Washington. Oh, no. The internet's not gone down, has it, Harry? Oh, no. They know. Shut it down.
It happened.
It happened. We finally got hit. If you are watching live right now, if we are still live, this happened. The internet went down about an hour before the podcast was supposed to start, but we thought we'd solved it. I thought Pete solved it. Ugh. Apparently we're still live.
Okay.
I was about to start a game of Socialist Monopoly to pass the time, but okay. I'll try. Yeah, media couldn't be played. I'll try and go through as best I can. No, I don't. Let's not try and rely on the video clip, okay? She basically says that they're moving forward with all of the visa programs, green cards, all that, and then she says this, but also more people are becoming naturalized under this admin than ever before. More people are becoming citizens.
That's insane.
That's not what people voted for, is it?
Well, I was about to ask, have you got your Got What I Voted For award yet? Because I've got a like truckload of Fell For It Again awards that I can hand out if you'd like that. Because I don't remember anybody voting for this. Nobody voted for this. And it's ridiculous to try and argue that this is what it was for. Harry, we are still live, right? Okay, we're still live. Can't use links. Let me see. Will they load if I... Okay. All right, so I can still go through the links. I'll just describe them to you. So, there've been some pretty catastrophic problems with the messaging. And then, the big champions of MAGA, who didn't start off as champions of MAGA. In fact, they turned out to be very, very anti-MAGA when the movement first started 10 years ago, but then flipped when Donald Trump started doing some very particular things, like moving a particular embassy to a particular city that nobody expected him to. People like Ben Shapiro are all of a sudden very pro-Donald Trump. And on a recent interview with Trigonometry, he got into a lot of trouble for suggesting, when talking about the state of New York and the recent election of Mamdani, who we are not fans of on this podcast. We are very critical of Mamdani. He is going to run the city further into the ground than it already is, but at the very least paid lip service to the kind of ideas that New Yorkers are upset with the cost of living, the unaffordability of the city. Ben Shapiro comes out with this compelling counter message. If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you shouldn't live here. That kind of dismissive attitude that kind of characterized, say, the old school neocon 90s style conservative, which made everybody hate them in the first place.
I absolutely despise this sort of argument that, you should abandon where you're rooted, where your family and all of your loved ones are, presumably, and go away in the pursuit of work as an ends in and of itself.
The reason that everybody in Lebanon hates Lebanese politicians is because they made Lebanon's biggest export to become people. People are Lebanon's biggest export because the politicians are so bloody awful, because nobody can live there, because it's uninhabitable, because. And to sort of say that with a straight face is absolutely insane. And there is the obvious double standard, but again, as you said, Josh, the lack of respect for rootedness and belonging, the lack of love for your country, the lack of love for where your ancestors are, where your ancestors are from, it's crazy. And coming out and saying it this way, he tries to defend it in his own weird way, as he always does, but it just shows a level of disconnect that is breathtaking.
Well, furthermore, there were a lot of people, when I posted about this, that were trying to defend it, saying, well, he's actually right, though. You don't have a right or entitlement to live somewhere if you can't afford to. And you can say, on a purely economic basis, perhaps, but it is ignoring many of the reasons why New York has ended up in this position, when New York, as we've seen from the recent Mamdani elections, is being flooded with immigrants who then immediately go on to vote for a third worldist Muslim anti-white mayor and wants to bring in even more. It's a sanctuary city. They bring in all of these people, put even more pressure on the housing within New York, which, because of a host of different reasons, is already facing enough pressure that raises prices and inflates housing prices. He ignores all of that, and then again ignores the fact that it's the same problem on a national level in a place like England. If you move somewhere else, you're not solving the problem. You're kicking the can down the road. The kind of ideology that motivates these people to invite the entire world, especially the third world, into a city like New York is totalizing and universalizing. It doesn't see anywhere outside of its remit. It doesn't recognize borders. So you may move somewhere else where perhaps the demographics are a bit better, maybe the housing prices are a little bit better, maybe there are still job opportunities because all of your jobs haven't been outsourced or already given to foreigners, or all of your money isn't being taxed away to give to those foreigners. Guess what? 10 years down the line, same thing's coming over there.
Yep.
This is the ideology of eternal retreat. This is the loser ideology that has characterized the moderate right for 30, 40, 50 years and is why they have lost all of these cultural battles every single time.
And the thing that makes it sting all the more is Ben Shapiro is wealthy enough that he's isolated from any of the consequences, similar to the elites doing this sort of thing, in that he can retreat to a place that's walled and maybe, gated.
I think he's in Florida.
South Florida, in an area where he feels he belongs.
Yeah, and so it's sort of like well, I'm going to be rooted, but maybe not you. It's home for me and not for thee.
Yes.
And after this complete PR disaster, he then, following Donald Trump coming out saying, well, we're going to need the H-1Bs, comes out in support of H-1Bs, making the Vivek Ramaswamy economic argument, saying, can this play? Can this play?
There are, in fact, certain positions in the United States that require a level of expertise that may not be reachable in the numbers that are currently being churned out by American universities. That is a shortcoming of our educational system, and it is a problem. And so you can say we should up our game. I agree. We should absolutely up our game educationally. But in the meantime, if you do not bring in the labor supply, particularly to tech, tech will go find the labor supply. And so what you will end up with is an office that was employing 30 Americans and 3 H-1B visa people. If the costs grow too high, simply moving to another country where they hire 30 Indians and 0 Americans. Right? This is...
So you can't have a nation, you can't have a job, because otherwise tech bros might outsource everything anyway. So instead of outsourcing over there, you need them to outsource the labor force over here. Either way, your pay goes down, your opportunity goes away, you have to move out because you get crowded out of your own neighborhood and your own city.
I agree with you.
Is this a sustainable argument?
The thing is, sorry, Josh, just a second, please.
No, go ahead.
What this misses is the actual problem, which is the financialization of capital and the ability of capital to migrate anywhere that it wants to go. You want to try to impose some restriction on the ability of strategic companies to move out of the country. And you have to have a regulatory answer that says, actually, if you are Oracle or Microsoft or X or whatever big technology employer, you don't get to outsource jobs. Otherwise, you lose all access to this market. So this is a solvable problem. It's not that the laws of economics dictate that, no matter what, capital can move. You can stop capital from moving, and you can restrict it, and you can impose conditions on it, rather than allowing this insanity to continue. And you can make it become more efficient, and labor becomes better paid. And in the age of AI, defending H-1B visas for low-level technology jobs is just so mentally stupid.
Further, he does go on to try and make the old libertarian argument that if you were to restrict the movement of labor so that you can pay your own American workers more, and so it can be jobs set aside for American workers, well, this is going to be pushing up the price of products, and therefore everybody's going to be paying more. And on your idea of the financialization of labor, the question then becomes, does this economic model still work when you're talking about pure service and pure technological products that you're selling, where there's not as much of a cost to distribution? And also, and I hate to, maybe this is going to make me sound like a socialist, right? Okay, maybe this is going to make me sound like a commie. I have never understood, in the age of corporate CEOs who can jump from one business to another, potentially collapse the business and then jump straight to another business where they become a CEO or a high-ranking executive, or jump into government regulation. Why it is that, okay, say that you do set those jobs aside for Americans and pay them a bit more. Why can't those bosses who are already multi-millionaire, multi-billionaires, why can't they just take a minor hit to their own pay packet to be able to set that money aside for the workers anyway? This isn't like a mom and pop store from the 1840s where they're opening up another shop. So they've got major profit, like really slim profit margins. So they genuinely can't afford it, and they're taking on huge risk, and if everything goes under, their lives are destroyed. Mm-hmm. We're talking about huge corporations here who are subsidized. If you look into the actual AI business bubble, it is a bubble. A lot of the funding is coming from OpenAI to fund companies like Oracle, like ChatGPT. It's a huge bubble where they're all financing one another back and forth.
Not just that, the Federal Reserve is actively intervening in the stock market to boost the share prices of these companies and keep the founders ridiculously wealthy and make them even wealthier. So there is active intervention on the part of the government to prop up the share prices of these companies and to constantly save them. they're getting a steady stream of bailout money through the Federal Reserve's printing press.
So it's a propped up fake bubble for a fake economy.
Yes.
Anyway, so like why can't you choose to employ Americans in a fake economy anyway? If the whole thing's fake and gay already, why do you then also have to have demographic replacement on top of it?
This was what I was going to say, is that they treat H-1B visas as if they're a sort of inevitability, the only solution, when actually there are other solutions available. You can create government incentives. So for example, if you sponsor Americans going through college, you can get tax cuts. There are lots of different things you can do to incentivize them training and hiring internally. And in fact, there's much more leeway with that, and it's much better to keep these tech jobs in the US using policy and incentives, because that's also a long-term strategy rather than just importing more and more people. I don't understand why you wouldn't choose that anyway, even with ideology, because it's such a...
Because financial capital has zero loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
Financial capital has zero loyalty, zero belonging, zero love. It doesn't come from a place where it actually wants anything good for the workers. It just looks at quarterly reports and share prices, and that's all it can ever think about. So the model itself is fundamentally broken, and it has to be fixed to become less financial, to become more national, and that requires aggressive government action against oligarchs. And this is the only way. There's no other way other than to sort of attack the oligarchs and tell them, listen, you move, you might find yourself falling out of a 6-story window one day, huh? Be careful.
But anyway, that clip was part of a larger podcast that Ben Shapiro did, 25 minutes of which are posted onto Twitter here, called Fast Facts, where he's trying to recontextualize himself and explain himself and say that his words are being taken out of context. Of course, to further explain the H-1B stuff, he uses the example of Werner von Braun as an example, as a good case of brain drain from other countries for the benefit of the US, completely ignoring the huge difference in quality between one-off German geniuses, like actual scientific geniuses, and a load of foreigners from the third and second world who are mainly just here to crowd out American workers on entry-level tech jobs. And then he tries also to contextualize his statement on New York and say, well, let's play the full clip. And then you listen to the full clip and you go, that changes nothing. It changes nothing. All it is extra waffle on top of the actual substantive content of the statement that he made. And when you're talking about H-1B, again, let's look at the actual arguments against it, like this that you kindly sent me, this clip from Palmer Luckey, head of Anduril, which is a defense contract company in the US, letting slip a little bit about the H-1B visa program in California when he was still working there in Silicon Valley.
There was a little bit of a debate on that not too long ago, correct?
If you do like the skilled immigration versus not. Yeah. So that's true. The difference there is that H-1Bs are about whether or not they're, like, it's on theory. Of course, there's so much H-1B abuse. You would not believe what I saw when I was in Silicon Valley. It is insane. It's obviously a program to try and replace U.S. workers with basically slave labor that can't ever escape. The H-1B abuse is crazy.
So just for context here, Palmer Luckey invented Oculus, which is a VR thing that you
It's now
wear.
called the Meta Quest.
Used it before, yeah.
I haven't. And now he's building all kinds of advanced drones and missiles and crazy technology for the USA to prepare for a war with China. So in terms of genius, this guy isn't at Elon Musk's level, but he is much, much better than a Bill Gates or a Larry Ellison. Let's put it this way. In terms of actual engineering capability and genius. And if he's the one saying this is being abused to bring about slave labor, because when you're on H-1B visa, you're sort of stuck there indefinitely until maybe your children get American citizenship.
I believe with H-1B, you're reliant on the company that you're working for essentially vouching for you to remain in the country.
Exactly.
I do wonder whether one of the internal arguments given to Trump for this is that, well, the Chinese have deliberately suppressed their wages to undercut American manufacturing. We've got to do this to compete with the Chinese and beat the Chinese, which
While at the same
Indians could have
time,
beaten the Chinese, they would have done so already.
of course, I very much agree.
And similarly, at the same time as we're having to beat I saw the clip of Rudy Giuliani earlier today talking about the Chinese defense capabilities, how they're manufacturing all of this new defense technology that could pose a threat to the US. And the response to that is always going to be, so you want 500,000 Chinese students in the country learning the skills to outcompete you that they'll take back to China?
A lot of the rhetoric coming from MAGA is inconsistent with
Is incoherent.
And the second part of that is that the Chinese weapons manufacturing now is moving massively towards automation and robotics, and not Indian labor. If this was going to be a source of success, they would have tried it, but they don't try that. They even reject high-skilled visas in China. It's really unpopular. So if this is happening, if this competition is happening in the age of robotics, the last thing that you need is more labor. You need more capital.
Cheap labor is the enemy of innovation anyway.
Exactly. A point that, Powell made very clearly, and that's been known since, forever.
But returning to H1B, there are the other arguments against it, which is just that this is a very interesting article by Matt Forney on his Substack, The Visa Files, saying Indians are waging a war on America and nobody is doing anything about it, which is highlighting the abuse of the H1B visa system by primarily Indians. We've already looked late last year at how they make up the vast majority of people using that visa scheme. And he cites an example here, which was a whistleblower, an insider at Fidelity Investments, saying that the whistleblower reports that while Indian candidates would perform decently in their interviews, they would suddenly become incompetent when they actually started working for Fidelity. Examples given include senior and principal engineers who couldn't perform basic tasks like merging a pull request or sending a message in understandable English, message attached below for example. The whistleblower reports having to walk through and do tickets for senior engineers because they have no clue how to do them on their own despite claiming years of full stack experience on their resumes. The whistleblower believes that Indians are taking over NTT and the company is a front to flood Canada and the US with Indians.
You saw the other scandal where I think some Indian executives who were making the Indians who they hired pay them money in exchange for employing them. And it's a different culture, guys. It's not a culture of excellence. It's not a culture of integrity. It's not going to work.
And I'll go on and just read out these next two paragraphs as well because they're quite informative. Matt Forney says here, I can confirm that Indians fake their credentials through my own experience. For many years, I worked as a college essay ghostwriter for various firms. Ghostwriters effectively help college students cheat by writing their essays and other coursework for them, usually via the legal loophole that the essays are for study purposes and what the clients do with them is out of the firm's control. The majority of ghostwriting clients are foreign students in American, Canadian, British or Australian universities, usually from India, Pakistan, China, the Middle East or Africa. And there's China again.
I've seen this at university where there were Chinese students that could barely speak a word of English, and all of a sudden they'd be getting really good grades. I'm like, how on earth are you doing that on a master's course? Incredibly complicated.
Well, before ChatGPT, it would have been guys making money out of it, like these ghostwriters.
I've seen them advertised. I even had people approaching me after I graduated, actively seeking me out to do this because my grades were...
I know more than one PhD graduate in Britain from top universities who cannot write 3 paragraphs, but they have PhDs.
Impressive. That must have been some really great work to be able to get around the essays.
Incredible work.
Yeah. But he carries on saying, these people are either too lazy to do their own work or incapable of doing it due to their poor English. I've ghostwritten everything from computer code to legal papers to lab work for nursing students. These are the people who are going to be looking after you under their totally legit qualifications. And universities tolerate this despite most universities mandating suspension or expulsion for plagiarism because they either fear being accused of racism or can't afford to lose the students' tuition money. And this is what Donald Trump is trying to prop up with over 500,000 foreign students, particularly Chinese students, coming in to prop up an incredibly corrupt university scheme in America. He goes on to say the industry no longer exists due to the rise of ChatGPT and other LLMs that can do it for them. If you've ever wondered why nothing seems to work anymore, Indians are likely the cause. Something as simple as calling to fix your bank to fix a false fraud alert, which took maybe 5 minutes a decade ago, is now a protracted struggle where you get put on hold repeatedly for half an hour while the Indian customer service agent repeatedly confers with her manager because she's incapable of thinking outside of the script given to her. I experienced this myself working in a call center 10 years ago. We were the English branch of it doing insurance claims, but if you had customer service problem, you transferred it to the customer service call center, which was in India. And I was on hold more often than not for potentially up to an hour before, as the person on the other side was rude, was trying to do everything that they could to avoid taking the call, or just trying to put it off as long as possible by needing to speak to the manager. So I can confirm that this is exactly what happens. Indian truck drivers with fraudulently obtained CDLs have caused numerous crashes, injuries, and deaths, such as the recent case of Harjinder Singh. Indians have colonized entire industries in America through fraud and gaming the system, the Patel Motel cartel being a prominent example. That's a fun rabbit hole to dive down that we might have to at some point. There's even considerable evidence that the Indian scam calls and emails are the result of Indian contractors stealing Americans' private information, as many banks and other financial institutions rely on contractors or have outright offshored sensitive operations to India. So is this a great idea to be advocating for H-1Bs just because Donald Trump says they're a great idea? No. No, there's so much evidence against it. But a reminder, though, that Ben Shapiro in the past has shown that he loves the idea of ethnic handouts for Palantir, as long as they're, for his group. That's always interesting, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out here, going back to 2023, when following the 7th of October, Palantir said, "We're launching an initiative for students who, because of anti-Semitism, fear for their safety. Welcome to join Palantir, setting aside 180 positions for them immediately." Ben Shapiro, love this. Love this. Should those jobs be outsourced to H-1Bs, Ben? Or should they just be specifically set aside for you? If so, what's the argument against setting them aside for Americans who are experiencing all of the downsides of the financialized economy? Will he address that? No, I very much doubt it. And then if we go on to the Indian stuff, just very, very quickly, I know we've been going on for a little bit. There's the Dinesh D'Souza issue, which is related to something that you were covering earlier on this week, which is the Tyler Oliveira situation, where he went to the Poop Festival and was going to make a documentary on it, but got threatened and doxxed by Indians who were threatening him.
Did release it in the end.
He did end up releasing it. They were making weird schizo posts. This guy, skin suiting Immanuel Kant, saying that, his sister's got an OnlyFans and an Indian boyfriend that he's so scared of, so he did this to try and humiliate the Indian. What the f are you talking about?
This is all made up.
Yeah, this was all made up. They've got this weird obsession, if you get them angry at you on Twitter, of just bringing up OnlyFans for some reason. I assume because they're obsessed with it and they're all subscribed to it.
I think lots of people have come to that conclusion as well.
Yeah. And then out of nowhere, after Oliveira reported on this and said that, I am going to actually release the documentary in the end, Dinesh D'Souza just comes out of nowhere. It comes out of nowhere. Nobody said that he had to do this, and says, how about commenting on this festival? Seems like the future belongs to the poop throwers. Dinesh, I thought you were all about colorblind meritocracy, bro. If color doesn't matter, if race and religion and everything else doesn't matter, why are you so proud of this graph of median household income by ethnic group? Why are you so clearly offended by this documentary being made in the first place? That's so strange, Dinesh.
It's almost like when push comes to shove, people side with their in-group, even if they claim that they don't have one.
What a weird thing to defend.
Yeah.
They
always come out as blood and soil nationalists for their own group.
Yeah, but he's positioned himself as a Christian and all of that stuff, and presumably a pagan festival of this sort would be as offensive to him as it would be to any other decent Christian. Why are you throwing shit at each other? It's disgusting.
Yeah.
So to come out and defend this kind of thing is just so weird.
And then he came out as well defending the H1B thing, which I'm sure he has no personal reason why he would do so.
It's just meritocracy.
Saying, oh, many people, our education system sucks, it's all indoctrination, no real learning standards have plummeted. True. Those same people, is Trump seriously saying our graduates are not the best in the world and can do any job you can think of? Yeah, but when it comes to like tech jobs and actually technically demanding stuff, then Americans, by which I primarily mean white Americans who actually have to earn those positions in university and can't get away with outsourcing all of their grade and learning to ghostwriters and ChatGPT, probably are still some of the best in the entire world, and also, again, have been crowded out in the first place. There are so many young white American men who have the qualifications and the ability who just aren't allowed to.
It's a bit hyperbolic because American education's still incredibly good.
When you adjust it all by race, a different picture comes out.
Yeah, and he said that you need to do William F. Buckley's rule. Keep a big tent, but exclude bigots, anti-Semites, and lunatics. And that's both morally sound and politically wise. Keep losing, folks. Coming to you from the guy who cancelled Sam Francis back in the 90s, who happily dogpiled on Pat Buchanan alongside William F. Buckley. Just keep doing that thing that you keep doing that means that you lose. People are sick of it. People are tired of it, which is why, can't go into the whole thing right now, it's almost 2 hours long. Tucker Carlson's rebuttal to all of this against Mark Levin and against Ben Shapiro was masterful, and I recommend that you watch this. But you see this, and you see the diminishing audience share that people like Dinesh D'Souza and Ben Shapiro have. Shapiro, I believe, is losing about 10,000 subscribers on his YouTube channels every week now. You can see that Conning is not only struggling to get a straight message that appeals to people in the current climate, they are actively tanking their reputations. They are crashing and burning. And I, for one, am happy to see the rise of a more populist right that cares about people and is trying to embody the spirit that MAGA started with before it was co-opted by Zionist interests, before it was co-opted by tech bros, and before it was co-opted away from the American people and what they need and what they deserve.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.